On a misty morning at Harbor Point Base, a quiet mechanic stood outside the security gate with his German Shepherd sitting faithfully at his side. He expected nothing more than a glimpse of the K9 memorial ceremony, a few distant memories stirring in his chest, and then a quiet walk home. But everything changed the moment a Marine captain stopped in front of him, her eyes locked not on his face, but on the faded Phantom 3 dog tag hanging from his dog's collar. A dog tag that should have belonged only to a K9 who never made it out of the tunnels of Afghanistan. What happened next brought the bustling base to a halt and uncovered a truth no one was prepared to face. Before we begin this unexpected story of instinct, redemption, and the bond between a veteran and the dog who carried his healing, consider subscribing to our channel. It helps us bring you more heartfelt stories, more moments of quiet courage, and more reminders that even in the darkest places, something faithful still watches over us. Now, let's begin. The morning fog drifted low across Harbor Point, curling over the wooden planks of the old pier like it remembered every footprint that had crossed it. Every fisherman, every traveler, every ghost of a story no one had finished telling. The small coastal town rested quietly beneath a pale sky, the smell of salt and cold iron hanging over the bay. Lights from the distant naval base flickered like tired stars refusing to go out, casting thin reflections across the water. In a small, weather-worn cabin on the slope overlooking the shore, Staff Sergeant Liam Carver sat alone at his kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee. 35 years old, tall and powerfully built, with dark brown hair trimmed close and a faint and perpetual shadow of stubble across his jaw. Liam carried the look of a man who had learned to live silently beside pain. A long scar ran along his left forearm, thin, pale, and jagged like a white river. And he kept it covered most days, even when no one else was around. His blue-gray eyes held a particular heaviness, too steady to be sorrow, too calm to be peace, like someone who spent every sunrise persuading himself he had survived the night. At his feet, pressed lightly against his boot, lay Echo, a 4-year-old German Shepherd with sable black and gray fur and sharp, intelligent amber eyes. Her ears stood alert even as she rested, twitching at sounds only she seemed to register. There was an uncanny certainty in the way she moved, as if some old instinct guided her decisions before thinking could catch up. Echo was loyal, watchful, and intense, trained once as a military K9 before she was retired early for reasons Liam still didn't fully understand. But from the first moment he saw her at the shelter, standing apart from the other dogs with her gaze locked onto him, as if she already knew him, Liam felt something in his chest shift. He adopted her the same day without a second thought. They had become each other's quiet gravity. A sharp clatter echoed from the workshop radio, pulling Liam's attention. The old device sat on the counter, half covered with oil smudges, wires exposed like veins. The announcer's voice crackled through static, and a reminder that tomorrow Harbor Point Base will host its annual K9 Memorial and Demonstration Ceremony. Families, veterans, and service members are welcome. Liam stiffened. Echo lifted her head, sensing the change in him before he processed it himself. She nudged his boot gently, the way she always did when his breath shortened and the edges of memory began to fray. "I'm fine," he murmured. He wasn't. Not really. The ceremony, the K9 Memorial, that meant handlers, dogs, uniforms, names engraved on metal plates. It meant remembering the things he tried not to remember. The sand, the explosions, the choking dust of the underground tunnels in Afghanistan. It meant remembering Nova, the K9 who didn't make it out. It meant remembering why. Liam had walked away from the Marines entirely. Echo pressed her nose against his knee, insistent. He reached down and stroked her head slowly, fingers sinking into the thick fur at her neck. "I'm fine," he repeated softly, but Echo's ears twitched as if she disagreed. After breakfast, Liam stepped outside onto the small porch overlooking the harbor. The wooden boards creaked beneath his boots. Gulls circled overhead, their cries sharp and thin against the cold morning air. A thin gray light stretched across the water, making the town appear softer, quieter, as though it were trying not to disturb its own sadness. Sleep had been unkind again. He'd barely closed his eyes before the dream started. A tunnel collapsing, sand pouring like water, Nova's bark swallowed by dust. He woke with a strangled gasp, sweat cold on his back, Echo already standing on the bed with her paws on his chest, grounding him, commanding him to breathe. She always knew. Inside again, he grabbed his jacket and stepped toward the door. Something crunched beneath his boot. He looked down and saw a white envelope lying on the floor, partly slid under the door. The edges were softened from damp air, as though it had sat there for days. Before he could reach for it, Echo moved first, snatching it gently in her jaws and bringing it to him like a message retrieved on patrol. She sat in front of him, tail stiff, eyes locked onto his in a strangely serious way. Liam took the envelope from her. His name was written in dark ink. To Staff Sergeant Liam Carver, Phantom 3. His throat tightened. Phantom 3. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. A specialized Marine unit that operated where maps stopped and shadows began. The kind of missions no one talked about outside of dim, guarded rooms. The kind of missions where some men came home different, and some didn't come home at all. He opened the envelope. Inside was a formal invitation embossed with the Marine Corps seal. You are respectfully invited to attend the Harbor Point K-9 Memorial and Recognition Ceremony. Attendance requested for surviving members of Phantom 3. Surviving members, as if there were many left. Liam leaned against the counter, the air suddenly thinner around him. He hadn't spoken to anyone from that unit in over a decade. No reunions, no calls, no visits. He had walked away and built his life from the quiet pieces that were left. Echo circled him once, ears angled back, picking up on the tension again. She sat beside him, pushing her head under his hand until his fingers curled against her fur. I'm not going, Liam whispered. But saying it aloud didn't make the decision feel any more real. Echo abruptly trotted toward the front door and stared through the glass panel as if sensing something out there the way animals sometimes sense incoming storms. The fur along her spine rose slightly. Not fear, but recognition. She let out a single low growl, focused, deliberate, almost mournful. Liam froze. Echo was not a dog who growled without cause. And the strange part, she wasn't looking at a person or a car or an animal. She was staring at the empty road, as if waiting for someone who should be there. Someone returning, or someone he never thought he'd see again. The hairs on Liam's neck stood. A cold intuition curled through him, the kind that whispered, "This is not over. The past is not done with you." Echo looked up at him, eyes intense, almost pleading. And Liam, for the first time in years, felt the unmistakable pull of a path he thought he buried. The rest of the morning passed in reluctant silence. Liam tried busying himself by checking the old generator he'd been repairing for a fisherman down the road. But his focus drifted. Each clang of his tools echoed too loudly, each metallic scent too reminiscent of desert heat and scorched metal. Memory had a way of creeping back in through the cracks. Echo stayed near him the entire time, her movements strangely deliberate, almost as if she were evaluating him, watching him, urging him. When the sun reached its highest point, Liam finally sat down on the wooden steps of his porch. Echo settled beside him, leaning her weight against his leg. He took a breath and said to her, "You don't want me staying away, do you?" Echo didn't move, didn't bark. She simply stared at him with those amber eyes, steady, unflinching, understanding in a way no human gaze had ever been. He set the invitation down next to him. The wind flipped it open again, the Marine Corps seal shining faintly. Liam rubbed a hand across his face. "Just because they asked. Doesn't mean I have to show up." Echo huffed softly, nudging the envelope with her nose. Liam couldn't help an exhausted laugh. "You're relentless." He picked up the invitation again, staring at the date. Tomorrow. One day. One choice. One return to a world he had run from for 19 long, haunted years. He folded the invitation with a resigned sigh and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Fine. We'll go," he said quietly. Echo's ears lifted instantly. "But we're just looking," he warned. "We're not staying, and we're definitely not talking to anyone." Echo thumped her tail once on the porch, as if privately disagreeing. Liam didn't see that. But the harbor wind carried a feeling he couldn't shake. Something shifting, something approaching, something that would pull him back whether he agreed or not. And so the chapter closed with a man, a dog, and an unopened truth waiting to rise with the next tide. The afternoon light in Harbor Point carried the muted gold of a sun that had forgotten warmth. A thin breeze slid across the waterfront, stirring the scent of salt, rust, and quiet regret. Liam Carver walked beside Echo along the old boardwalk, their shadows stretching long behind them on the weathered planks. The German shepherd kept a steady pace at his left heel, her amber eyes constantly shifting, scanning movement, listening to sounds far beyond human perception. Her sable black and gray coat glimmered in streaks of light that cut between gaps in the cloud cover. And every so often, she looked up at Liam with a gaze that felt too knowing, too deliberate. The naval base, Harbor Point Base, stood across the water, guarded by tall fencing and razor-straight lines of floodlights. Its flagpole stood like a silent sentinel, the American flag barely stirring in the wind. From where he stood, Liam could see the tops of hangars and training fields where the K-9 unit often practiced. It had been years since he'd walked onto those grounds. Years since Phantom 3. Years since Nova. But distance never truly severed what memory refused to bury. Echo paused beside him, ears flicking toward the base. Liam followed her gaze and felt the air tighten around him, as though something unseen bridged the distance between his past and the present moment. "Don't start," he murmured to her. "We're just here to walk." But Echo remained still, ears forward, tail held stiff. Not an alarm, but anticipation, as if she knew something was waiting for him on the other side of that fence. Liam exhaled slowly. "I said we're just walking." Echo's gaze didn't waver. He looked away first. They left the boardwalk and moved toward the coastal road, passing a small row of shops clustered around a corner. A bait and tackle shop, a thrift store that never changed its window display, and Marley's Diner, a narrow cafe owned by a retired Navy machinist named Howard Howie Briggs. A wiry, elderly man with a stooped back, pale hazel eyes, and a thin salt and pepper beard trimmed with military precision. Howie was nearing 70, though he carried himself with the kind of stubbornness that refused to surrender to time. He'd lost a son to war more than 20 years ago, something that carved a permanent grief into the sharp angles of his face, softening him only toward those who served. As Liam approached, Howie stepped outside to shake crumbs from a pastry tray. He squinted against the light before his gaze sharpened with familiarity. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, voice raspy like old sandpaper. Carver? Liam Carver from Phantom? Phantom something, right? Liam stopped dead. Echo immediately leaned into his leg, sensing the shift in his breathing. Phantom 3, Liam answered reluctantly. Long time ago. Howie's expression softened with a mixture of respect and sorrow. I remember. Heard bits and pieces. You were the one. He caught himself, not finishing. Didn't expect to see you back for the ceremony tomorrow. I'm not going to the ceremony, Liam said quickly. Howie raised a brow. Your name's on the list. Liam's jaw tightened. He gave a stiff nod and stepped aside. Come on, Echo. But before he could move on, Howie gently grabbed his arm. If you do go, he said quietly, you won't be alone. A lot of us carry ghosts, some heavier than others. The trick is learning which ones want to hurt you, and which ones just want you to remember them. Liam didn't respond. He pulled free gently and walked away, Echo staying glued to his side. They continued along the street until they reached a public bench facing the harbor. Liam sat. Echo sat too, never breaking form, posture straight, eyes tracking every passerby. Her presence always radiated a strange eloquence, a kind of silent commentary on the world around her. Across the road, a TV inside a sports bar flickered bright enough to reflect through the windows. A slideshow presentation aired on a local news segment, preview footage for the K9 memorial. Liam's attention began drifting until the screen changed to a grainy black and white image of a German shepherd. The caption beneath it read, In memory of Nova, K9 and a 14 Phantom 3. The dog in the picture was unmistakable. Nova, his partner through tunnels of collapsing earth, through gunfire and dust storms, through missions where even the sun seemed afraid to shine. Nova, who saved more lives than anyone would ever record. Nova, who didn't walk out of the darkness with him. Echo suddenly stood, tail stiff, ears flattened against her skull. A low growl reverberated from deep within her chest. Not anger, distress. Liam's heart lurched. Hey, it's okay, he said, touching her neck. It's a picture, just a picture. But Echo's breathing quickened. Her eyes locked on the screen as if she recognized the dog. As if something in her memory, something instinctive, ancestral, was responding to the familiar shape, the stance, the eyes. Liam held her collar gently. Echo, look at me. But she didn't. Her gaze remained fixed on Nova. Without warning, Echo stepped backward and pressed herself against Liam's knees, trembling, not from fear, but from something stranger, deeper, like a shock of recognition that didn't belong to her. She let out a soft, confused whine and turned her head sharply toward the naval base again. Liam froze. It was the same direction she had stared into that morning. As if Nova's memory was not just haunting him, but calling her, calling both of them. And in that moment, Liam felt a certainty he couldn't explain. Tomorrow would not be a simple reunion with old ghosts. Something alive, something unfinished, was waiting. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, Liam rose from the bench. That's enough for today, he said, voice quieter than before. He reached for Echo's collar, but she moved ahead of him, guiding him back toward the road with an almost urgent precision. They returned home just as dusk began painting the sky in streaks of violet and steel blue. Inside the cabin, Liam dropped his keys onto the counter and rubbed the tension from his shoulders. Echo paced the living room, her nails tapping softly against the hardwood floor, tail held low but steady. She was anxious. Rare for her. Finally, she walked toward a storage cabinet near the back wall and sat down in front of it, staring. Liam frowned. What now? Echo nudged the cabinet with her paw. He knelt, opened the door, and pulled out a small metal box. The hinges squeaked with disuse. The box contained the only remnants of his military life. A folded flag he never displayed, commendation ribbons he never spoke of, an old tactical knife he no longer carried, and a weathered dog tag from another lifetime. Liam hesitated, then reached for the last item. A broken piece of metal, worn smooth on the edges. It was engraved with one word: Nova. His breath caught. Echo lowered her head, sniffed the tag delicately, then touched her nose to it and looked up at Liam. Her amber eyes held an expression eerily close to understanding. You don't know what this means, Liam whispered. Echo blinked once, slow and deliberate. But she did know. In her own way. She knew. Liam fastened the metal piece onto her collar. It shimmered faintly under the dim lamplight. He sat on the floor beside her, leaning against the cabinet. The weight of the past pressed heavily against his spine. But Echo nudged his shoulder, grounding him in the present. After several minutes, he finally spoke. Tomorrow we go to the base, but we're only standing outside. No talking, no reliving anything. Echo thumped her tail once. Just looking, he repeated. Though Echo's steady gaze told him she expected far more. He didn't argue. He was too tired. As night fell, Harbor Point grew quiet, the waves whispering like distant voices against the rocks. Liam locked the door, turned off the lamp, and stood in the doorway of his room. Echo circled her bed twice, then lay down, her eyes still fixed on him, as though ensuring he wouldn't disappear during the night. In the darkness, he could almost hear Nova's final bark echoing through the tunnels, warning him, urging him, saving him. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow, the shadows of Phantom 3 would rise again. The morning of the memorial ceremony arrived wrapped in a chill that tasted of ocean spray and expectation. Harbor Point Base glimmered under the pale sun, its chain-link fences lined with families, veterans, and service members gathering for the annual K9 tribute and recognition. The air hummed with speeches warming up over loudspeakers, boots striking pavement, the bark of working dogs, the rustle of flags, all mixing into a kind of living heartbeat. Liam Carver walked along the outer perimeter road with Echo pressed close to his left leg. Her movement mirrored an old K9 formation rhythm. Steady pace, silent, scanning wider than him, ahead of him, behind him. She was 4 years old, full-grown and exquisitely trained in her own instinctive way. Her sable fur lying sleek across a muscular frame, her amber eyes bright but always evaluating, always listening. He hadn't taught her that discipline. She had simply been born with it. Like a whisper of something inherited through bloodlines of dogs who had once marched into war beside Phantom 3. Liam adjusted the collar of his brown jacket. He told himself the same lie again. Just outside the fence, that's it. But Echo's slow sideways glance suggested she knew he wouldn't keep that promise. The crowd had grown thicker near the main entrance. Marines in dress uniforms escorted families and photographers. A formation of K9 handlers was already lining up, their dogs sitting alertly beside them. The scent of hot metal, dust, and anticipation drifted through the morning air. Familiar, unsettling. They approached a stretch of sidewalk just beyond the checkpoint when Echo suddenly halted. Her ears snapped upright, body rigid. Liam felt the shift before he saw the reason. A delivery truck at the top of the hill jerked forward, then swerved, tires shrieking. The driver's panicked voice carried faintly, "Brakes! Brakes!" The truck barreled downhill toward a cluster of civilians, frozen in confusion. Before Liam could react, Echo lunged, teeth gripping his sleeve, jerking him sideways with brute force. He stumbled off the curb just as the truck skidded across the exact patch of road he had been standing on. Horns blared. People screamed. Metals scraped asphalt until the truck finally veered into a barricade with a deafening crunch. Dust lifted like smoke. Liam blinked, heart thundering. Echo remained pressed against him, panting hard, eyes scanning the scene as though calculating angles of danger. The driver, a middle-aged man with pale skin, hollow cheeks, and a trembling hand, ran toward them. "Oh God, thank you, he stammered. "Are you two okay? I didn't see, brakes just went out, I swear." His gaze bounced anxiously between Liam and Echo before spilling into nervous gratitude. "You saved your dad's life, girl," he told Echo, still shaking. Then, with breathless excitement, he added, "Big day, huh? They're honoring Phantom 3 inside. Hero unit from what I heard." Liam stiffened. Echo's ears twitched. The driver didn't notice the ripple of tension he'd caused. He only slapped the truck door weakly and wandered off to deal with the MPs now rushing over. "Phantom 3? Liam muttered under his breath. Damn it. The words didn't matter. The universe had already set its trap. In the chaos around the barricade, a Marine usher directing traffic looked at Liam, at Echo, at the near miss, and said simply, "Sir, step through this way. You both need to be cleared as witnesses." Before he knew it, Liam found himself being guided past the entrance, past security, past the line he swore he'd never cross. Echo walked calmly, as though this outcome had been inevitable. Inside the base, Captain Riley Monroe watched the entire scene unfold from a vantage point near the grandstand. She was in her early 30s, tall, with dark brown hair pulled into a tight, high ponytail. Her face held sharp angles softened only by the faint freckles across her cheeks. She moved with the strict posture of someone who believed in rules as if they were sacred scripture. Her uniform fit her like another layer of discipline. Crisp, immaculate, precise. Riley trusted instinct, but hers leaned analytical, not emotional. She saw patterns where others saw coincidences. So when the man with the tired eyes and the German shepherd entered the gate, something subtle shifted in her gut. She watched how Liam scanned exits without turning his head. She watched how Echo positioned herself between him and each approaching soldier. She watched the way the dog adjusted her distance in perfect tactical movement. Close enough to guard, far enough to maneuver. That was no ordinary pet. That was formation behavior. That was Phantom 3 level behavior. Riley approached an MP at the gate. "The man who just came in, name?" "Liam Carver," the MP replied, flipping through a tablet. "Says he witnessed the truck incident. Dog's named Echo." Riley nodded, eyes narrowing. "I'll handle him from here." She walked toward Liam with purposeful steps. He noticed her immediately. No one missed Riley Monroe in uniform, and he tensed. Echo stepped slightly ahead, tail held stiff like a drawn line of defense. "Sir," Riley said evenly, "you and your dog need to remain for questioning regarding the brake malfunction." Liam straightened. "We already told the MPs." "I'm not asking," she replied, tone clipped. "I'm telling." Before Liam could answer, Echo let out a soft, rumbling growl, not hostile but warning. Riley's eyes shifted to the dog, and she studied Echo's posture deeply. "That's not fear," she murmured. "That's anticipation." Echo suddenly lifted her head, ears sharp, eyes fixed on the temporary grandstand where dozens of children sat waiting for a school demonstration group. Her gaze cut through the crowd like an arrow. Liam felt the shift too. There was something She sensed something far beyond the present moment. Riley followed Echo's line of sight. "Why is your dog staring at the kids?" Liam didn't answer immediately. Echo wasn't staring. She was predicting. He felt the tremor in her stance, the subtle pull forward, the silent message she seemed desperate for him to understand. He whispered, "Echo, what is it?" But Echo didn't move. She only stared at the grandstand with the kind of focus Liam had only ever seen once before. In Nova, seconds before a tunnel collapsed. Echo suddenly pressed her paw onto Liam's boot, claws curling as if anchoring him in place, and let out a single sharp bark, one that cut through the noise of the entire crowd. Heads turned. Children paused. Even the K-9 units momentarily broke formation. Riley stiffened. What does that mean? Liam had gone pale. Echo had used that bark only twice in her life. Once when a gas leak was seconds from exploding, and once when Liam nearly stepped on a buried IED during the Phantom 3 extraction. Her bark meant one thing, one terrifying, undeniable message. Danger is coming, and it's coming for someone innocent. The tension snapped thick in the air. Liam inhaled slowly, mind racing through scenarios he didn't want to acknowledge. Riley's voice broke through. "What aren't you telling me?" But before he could answer, an announcement boomed over the base speakers. "All guests, please move toward the demonstration field. The program will begin shortly." The crowd shifted toward the central area. Children on the grandstand leaned forward excitedly. The wind carried faint scents, fuel, hot metal, something off. Liam's spine prickled. Echo's fur stood on end like she was plugged into a spark of future tragedy. Riley tried to regain control. "You two still need clearance?" But Echo abruptly moved, stepping ahead toward the grandstand in a slow, deliberate, stalking motion. Not aggressive, protective. Watching, calculating, preparing. Liam grabbed her harness. "Not yet," he whispered. "We don't know what we're walking into." Echo didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed locked on the children. Her instincts had never once been wrong. Riley crossed her arms, eyes scanning the crowd with a chill tightening her face. "I don't know what this is," she said softly. "But I'm not letting either of you out of my sight." Liam swallowed. "Maybe you shouldn't." The wind shifted again. Echo's ears twitched. Something unseen was unfolding, a thread pulling tight. And Echo was already bracing for impact. The ceremony grounds swelled with movement as families gathered near the temporary grandstand erected for the K-9 demonstration. Morning sunlight glinted off the metal frame, casting sharp reflections across the pavement. Marines in dress blues ushered groups into place, while the handlers prepared their dogs. A line of German shepherds and Belgian Malinois sitting proudly beside their partners, tails thumping softly in anticipation. Liam Carver stood off to the side, Echo glued to his heel. Her posture had changed from tense to razor tight. Head low, ears angled forward, her whole frame vibrating with an alertness Liam recognized too well. She wasn't excited. She was warning him. Captain Riley Monroe positioned herself behind them, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Her uniform was immaculate as always, her dark ponytail pulled so tightly it sharpened the angles of her face. "We observe from here," she said. "Then you give your witness statement." Liam nodded, but didn't look at her. Echo's body language had swallowed all his attention. The dog wasn't merely alert, she was tracking. Liam followed her gaze to the grandstand, where nearly 40 children were packed together, legs swinging, laughter bubbling. Parents waved up at them, unaware the metal structure beneath their children swayed just a little too freely. Liam's chest tightened. Echo took one step forward, nose lifted, nostrils flaring at something subtle, something only she could detect. The announcer's voice boomed across the field. "Ladies and gentlemen, the K9 demonstration will begin in 5 minutes. Please remain seated." A ripple of sound shuddered beneath the grandstand, metal bending under strain, almost impossible to hear beneath the chatter. But Echo heard it. Her head snapped toward the sound, and she emitted a low, trembling growl that Liam felt like a vibration in his bones. "Easy, girl," Liam whispered. "Talk to me." Echo moved another inch closer to the structure. Her hackles rose. Liam's instincts ignited instantly. There was danger here. Not a threat he could see, but a threat Echo felt, and that was enough. He stepped toward the grandstand, voice lowering into the tone he once used in dark, unstable tunnels. "Riley, we have a problem." She followed his line of sight. "Looks stable to me." "Listen," Liam insisted. "Echo hears something. The structure's wrong." Riley's jaw tightened. "We have engineers who inspected it this morning. Then they missed something." Echo suddenly let out a sharp, high bark, singular, piercing, so loud the nearby handlers turned. Liam froze. He had heard that bark only a handful of times in his life. It was Nova's bark before the cave-in. Echo had never known Nova. Yet the instinct was identical. Echo lunged forward, not at danger, but toward a child. A small boy wearing a red hoodie, dark blonde hair falling into his eyes. The dog stared straight at him with an intensity that made Liam's breath falter. It was not aggression. It was recognition. As if Echo saw not the boy as he was, but the injury he would suffer moments from now. As if Echo was watching the future happen. The boy shifted on the edge of the platform, just a hair too far, his sneakers slipping toward a gap. Echo barked again, the sound cracking the air. The moment stretched, taut and terrifying. And Liam realized Echo wasn't warning him anymore. She was telling him who to save. Liam didn't think. He ran. "Move!" he shouted, voice cutting through the crowd with a force that made heads snap around. He leapt onto the lower step of the grandstand and shoved his hand against the side panel. The metal groaned beneath his touch. Weld seams had thinned from salt corrosion. The footing was compromised. One corner was splitting under the weight of dozens of children. "Riley," he barked, "the weld is failing. Get people off now." But Riley hesitated. A second too long. She saw the crowd more than the danger, and that second nearly cost lives. Echo sprinted past Liam, her claws scraping the metal. She grabbed the red-hooded boy's sleeve in her teeth and yanked him backward, so hard he fell into her side instead of tumbling off the edge. The boy gasped, eyes wide, breathing in frightened bursts. At that exact moment, with a sound like thunder ripping through steel, the corner weld snapped. A whole segment of the platform dropped half a foot, tilting violently. Children screamed, parents panicked. Riley's eyes went wide with horror. Liam braced himself against the frame, planting his boots and shouting in a voice that came from a place deep, buried, and unmistakably marine. "Everyone off the right side. Now! Move!" His voice carried so powerfully that even Marines nearby froze before obeying. It was the voice of someone who had commanded in chaos. Someone who had pulled men out of collapsing holes. Someone trained to turn panic into momentum. Master Sergeant Cole Andrews, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and built like a wall of muscle, heard the command from across the field. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing. His rugged face, lined from decades of combat, registered something electric. He murmured under his breath, "That's Phantom 3 tone. Who the hell?" Cole pushed through the crowd with surprising speed for a man in his 50s. Meanwhile, Liam steadied the shuddering platform structure with his shoulder, directing families with rapid gestures. Left side, slow and orderly. Keep kids forward. Don't rush the stairs. Riley finally snapped out of her paralysis, grabbed a radio, and barked orders. MPs sprinted in. Handlers secured their dogs. In less than a minute, Liam's voice had turned what could have been a stampede into a controlled retreat. When the last child was down, the stand sagged again, another weld tearing free. Liam jumped clear just before the corner hit the ground with a metallic thud. Echo shielded the little boy with her body, licking his cheek as he trembled. Parents swarmed, pulling kids close. One woman cried, "That dog, she saved my son." Riley stared at Liam, really stared, and something softened in her sharp, disciplined features. She saw Echo's instinct. She saw Liam's leadership. She saw the truth she had resisted. Liam wasn't dangerous. He was trained. And Echo wasn't just any dog. She was something else. Something with a purpose. MPs surrounded them. "Sir, you and the dog need to come with us for a full statement." Echo pressed against Liam's leg, calm but alert. Liam raised his hands. "We'll cooperate. Just let the boy breathe first." The boy hugged Echo one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, burying his face in her fur. Liam swallowed hard. Echo nuzzled the child gently, as if sealing a silent promise. Riley stepped closer, her voice low, conflicted. "Carver, I misjudged you." Liam didn't respond. He simply placed a hand on Echo's head. Cole Andrews arrived, eyes locked onto Liam with an intensity somewhere between shock and recognition. He didn't speak, not yet. But the look was enough. He had heard that voice before. In dust, in fire, in tunnels filled with ghosts. And the name Phantom 3 pulsed behind his eyes, like a memory waking up. The K-9 command office sat at the far end of Harbor Point Base, a compact, reinforced structure with thick windows and walls painted the muted beige of military practicality. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of disinfectant, boot polish, and the metallic tang of dog crates. Liam Carver stood beside Echo near the center of the room as three figures watched him with varying shades of suspicion, curiosity, and something deeper. Recognition. Colonel Marcus Ellison was a broad, silver-haired man in his early 50s, his posture ramrod straight, even at rest. His eyes, ice blue and heavy with years, held the assessing calm of someone who had commanded through loss and triumph alike. Beside him stood Master Sergeant Cole Andrews, older than Ellison, with a thicker build, squared jaw, and hair that had turned almost fully gray. Cole's rugged features were carved by decades of service, and the kind of battles that left more scars inside than outside. His expression was controlled, but his eyes flickered with an intensity that betrayed a rising storm. Captain Riley Monroe stood off to the side, arms crossed. Her sharp-edged posture had softened since witnessing the chaos at the grandstand, but a disciplined tension still lined her shoulders. Her ponytail had loosened slightly, not enough to break uniform standards, but enough to reveal the adrenaline she was still recovering from. Liam kept his hands visible, Echo sitting at his left heel like a silent shadow. Her amber eyes tracked every movement inside the room, but her posture remained relaxed, trusting that Liam could handle whatever this was. Ellison began, voice steady. "Mr. Carver, you prevented a potential mass casualty incident today. We acknowledge that. But we have some questions. Questions we expect honest answers to." Liam nodded, jaw tight. "I told MPs everything already." Cole stepped forward. "We're not MPs." He said it not with arrogance, but with the weight of a man who had earned the right. "We're K-9 Command, and some of us knew the Phantom units. Very well. The name Phantom made Liam stiffen instinctively. Echo looked up at him, sensing the shift. Riley held a tablet. The report shows you acted with unusual certainty, Mr. Carver. You assessed structural failure in seconds. You anticipated crowd behavior. You gave commands like someone trained to take control under extreme pressure. She tilted her head. Mechanics don't do that. Ellison's gaze sharpened. We're trying to understand who you really are. Liam exhaled slowly and rubbed the side of his forearm. Just someone who's seen bad situations before. As he spoke, his sleeve tugged up slightly, revealing a faint scrape from bracing against the collapsing structure. Cole's eyes narrowed, not at the wound, but at the edge of a faded tattoo peeking beneath the fabric. Raise your sleeve, Cole said quietly. Liam froze. There's no need. That wasn't a request. Liam hesitated. Echo nudged his boot gently with her nose, a grounding gesture, then looked between him and Cole with deliberate calm, as though urging him not to hide. With a reluctant breath, Liam lifted his sleeve. The room fell into a silence so sharp it felt alive. There, inked into his skin, was a worn emblem, a spade-like insignia with a dog's silhouette and a set of coordinates circling it, the mark of Phantom 3. Cole's jaw trembled. My God. Carver. Liam Carver. You're... His breath hitched, rugged face cracking. You're the last one, the last survivor from the tunnel collapse. Riley stepped closer, stunned. Tunnel collapse? Cole didn't look away from Liam. Afghanistan. Phantom 3 was trapped in a subterranean pass. Enemy charges blew the entryway. They were buried alive. Only one handler and his canine made it out. He swallowed. Only one. Liam's throat tightened. He lowered his sleeve slowly. That story happened to someone else. Don't lie to me, Cole snapped. Not with anger, but with a desperation that came from memory. I was there for debrief. They said the handler kept everyone calm in the dark, that he put the dog's oxygen mask on another Marine, that when the tunnel gave way again, he shielded the dog. Cole's voice broke. They said the dog died saving him. Echo pressed her head against Liam's thigh, as if trying to anchor him to the present. Ellison spoke gently. What was the dog's name? Liam closed his eyes. Nova. The name sank into the room like a ghost returning home. Riley's expression softened with startled empathy. The Nova from the memorial slideshow? That was your dog? Liam nodded. She got me through the tunnels. Saved my life more than once. But in the final collapse, his voice strained, barely audible. She didn't come out. Echo shifted closer, resting her chin on his boot as if absorbing the pain. Her amber eyes glistened, not with fear, but something that looked suspiciously like recognition. Ellison stepped behind his desk, picking up a file stamped with red ink. Kie, handler, L. Carver. You were declared missing, presumed dead, the colonel said. Why disappear? Why not tell the Corps you survived? Liam opened his eyes, hollow and haunted. Because the Corps didn't lose me that day, he murmured. They lost Nova. I walked out alone. I couldn't stay. No one spoke. Even the ventilation hum seemed to fall silent. At that moment, the door opened, and Sergeant Major Alvin Ross, a stern man in his late 40s with dark skin, cropped black hair, and a face shaped by discipline, stepped inside. He held a clipboard stacked with ceremony schedules. Sir, Ross said to Ellison, the afternoon memorial is set. I have the roll call list. Should I read it now? Go ahead, Ellison replied. Ross cleared his throat. Phantom 3 Memorial Section. Reading names of those not expected to attend. He scanned the list. Sergeant Hale, Corporal Nixon, Staff Sergeant Reddick and... He paused. Handler Liam Carver. Riley inhaled sharply. Cole closed his eyes. Ross frowned. Sir, do we need to update this list? Ellison looked at Liam. Yes, he said softly. We do. Ross nodded and exited, closing the door behind him. Silence returned, tense, emotional, reverent. Echo stepped forward, gently pressing her paw onto Riley's hand. A surprising gesture, one of apology, maybe gratitude, maybe something neither woman nor dog fully understood. Riley's eyes widened. She looked at Liam with a quiet shift of respect. Cole straightened, voice firm but emotional. Carver, the Corps mourned you. They honored you. But that wasn't enough. Today, you don't get to disappear again. Ellison folded his hands behind his back. You are going to the ceremony, son. Not as a mechanic, not as a ghost, but as the last name on the Phantom roll call. Liam swallowed hard. I don't know if I can. Echo pressed her body against his leg, her silent loyalty saying what words couldn't. Ellison nodded at the dog. You have something guiding you now. She's telling you it's time. Liam looked into Echo's amber eyes. Steady, calm, certain. And for the first time in 19 years, he didn't see the darkness behind him. He saw a path forward. Ellison's voice deepened. Carver, this afternoon, you stand with us. Liam didn't nod, but he didn't refuse. Echo stood, tail raised slightly, ready, and fate moved with her. The afternoon sun hung low over Harbor Point Base, turning the concrete walkways gold and warming the cold steel rails that lined the ceremonial grounds. Carved into that light stood Liam Carver, hands in his jacket pockets, Echo sitting neatly beside him as if carved from shadow and instinct. The morning's chaos still lingered faintly in the air. The collapsed grandstand, the panic, the sharp commands that had slipped from Liam's mouth like muscle memory. But now, there was a quiet stretching between everything, a kind of breath held by the base itself. Captain Riley Monroe approached him from across the quad, her posture softer than usual, her steps slower. She hesitated before speaking, a rare sight from someone whose voice was normally made of order and authority. Liam, she said, voice low, before the ceremony, I owe you an apology. He raised his eyes, surprised by the vulnerability in her tone. Riley had dark circles beneath her eyes, barely concealed by her disciplined composure. You don't owe me anything, he replied. I judged you by your file, by the dirt under your nails, by the fact that you didn't want to be here. She exhaled shakily. And I treated Echo like a threat. But today, she saved a child. You saved dozens. And I'm sorry. Before Liam could answer, Echo stepped between them, gentle, deliberate, and placed her front paw firmly on Riley's boot. Riley's eyes widened. Echo's amber gaze held something warm, forgiving, almost ceremonial. Liam huffed a soft breath. She accepts your apology. Riley crouched slowly and touched Echo's head. Thank you, girl. The dog leaned into her palm, sealing the truce. A bell chimed across the base. The memorial ceremony was about to begin. People streamed toward the main lawn, where rows of folding seats surrounded a wooden podium draped in navy cloth. The American flag towered above them, its shadow long and solemn. On one side stood a table filled with framed photos of fallen K-9s, dogs with intelligent eyes frozen in time. Nova's picture sat near the center. Bright gaze, proud posture, the dog forever mid-breath in a world that had already moved on without her. Liam's jaw clenched when he saw it. Colonel Ellison stepped up beside him, his presence heavy with command. You ready, Carver? No, Liam admitted honestly. That's why you need to do it, Ellison said. The ones who are ready rarely say anything worth hearing. Liam swallowed and nodded. Echo brushed her body against his leg, grounding him. People settled. The hum quieted. Then Ellison stepped to the podium, clearing his throat, his deep voice rolling across the crowd like a drumbeat. "Today," he began, "we honor the warriors who serve without expecting recognition. Dogs who walk into fire for us. Dogs who hear danger before we feel it. Dogs who give everything and ask for nothing but trust." Soft murmurs spread across the crowd. Rows of K9, handlers straightened with pride. Ellison continued, "We also honor the men and women who walked with them. Units like Phantom 3, whose courage was forged in the darkest tunnels of Afghanistan." Liam's breath hitched. Riley, standing at the edge of the crowd, glanced at him with gentle encouragement. Ellison's voice deepened. "There is someone here who carries a story we must hear. Someone who did not want the spotlight, but whose silence has held too much weight for too long." He turned slightly. "Liam Carver, please join us." A hush fell over the crowd. Echo rose immediately, walking one step ahead as if guiding him toward fate itself. Liam swallowed once, then moved to the stage. Each step felt like walking through old memories, the kind with dust and blood and the echo of barks in darkness. When he reached the microphone, he let out a slow breath and looked at the sea of faces. Marines, families, children, veterans with tired eyes, and the framed photo of Nova, her gaze catching the light. "Hi," he began awkwardly. I'm Liam, and this is Echo." The dog sat beside him, posture perfect, attention fixed. "I wasn't supposed to be here today," he said. "For a long time, I thought my story ended in a tunnel overseas. Thought that when Nova didn't make it out, neither did I." The crowd stilled completely. "Nova was my partner," Liam said, voice steadying. "She saved me more times than I can count. In the dark, when I couldn't see my own hand, she led me. When the air was full of dust, she found me a way forward. And on the last day, when the tunnel collapsed, she chose me over herself." His throat flickered with emotion. "She gave me a second life, and I didn't know how to live it." Echo nudged his hand gently, as if reminding him she was there. "And then," he continued, "I met Echo. She isn't Nova, she's herself. But she has the same heart, the same way of seeing what we don't. Today she saved a child, because she felt something was wrong before any of us did." He looked at the crowd. Dogs like Echo, dogs like Nova. They see the world through a different truth. Sometimes shadows make noises only they can hear. Sometimes a future trembles in their bones before it reaches ours. He placed a hand on Echo's collar. "So, if you take anything from me today, let it be this. When a dog like this tells you something, believe them. They're not warning you, they're protecting you." A ripple of emotion washed through the audience. Echo suddenly lifted her head sharply, ears pinpointing something behind the crowd. For a breathless second, she stared into the distance, unblinking. Not threatened, not afraid. Waiting, as if she sensed a shift no one else yet felt. The hairs on Liam's arms rose. A faint breeze passed through the ceremony grounds, cold, strangely cold, cutting through the warm afternoon like a reminder that even in moments of healing, destiny had not yet finished its work. Echo's eyes softened a moment later, as if saying, "Not now, but soon." And then she settled again. The crowd never noticed, but Liam did, and it left a quiet question in his chest that refused to dissolve. When he stepped back from the podium, applause rose. Loud, emotional, grateful. Riley wiped her cheek discreetly. Cole stood with arms crossed, pride etched deep into his rugged features. Ellison gave a solemn nod, the nod of a commander acknowledging a warrior's final, unfinished duty brought into the light. Echo sat beside Liam, tail thumping once, as if telling him he had done exactly what Nova would have wanted. For the first time in years, Liam didn't feel like a ghost. He felt present. The ceremony closed with a roll call of the fallen. When the officer reached Handler Liam Carver, he raised his own hand quietly. Present. And Echo barked once, soft, firm, certain. The bark of a dog who knew the story wasn't over. The ceremony lights dimmed one by one as Harbor Point Base settled into its quiet evening rhythm. The ocean breeze rolled across the grounds, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and something older, like the memory of smoke long washed away by years. Liam Carver stood at the edge of the lawn, feeling a strange weight lift from his shoulders as the last of the guests dispersed into the parking lot. Echo remained by his side, calm, steady, almost regal in the fading light. Her silhouette stood tall against the horizon, the dog-tagged Nova catching one final glint from the setting sun. Colonel Ellison approached from behind, his tall frame casting a long shadow. "Carver," he said, his voice deep but gentler than it had been all day. "You spoke well. More importantly, what you said needed to be heard." Liam gave a small nod. "Didn't think I'd be on a stage today." "No one ever thinks they will be," Ellison replied with a faint smile. "But life tends to drag warriors into the light when their silence has lasted long enough." He paused. "I have a proposal for you." Liam raised an eyebrow. Ellison folded his arms behind his back. "Our K-9 rehabilitation program for veterans is expanding. We need instructors, handlers who understand what invisible wounds look like, men who know dogs like Echo and like Nova." Liam looked away, throat tightening. Echo nudged his leg with her nose. Ellison continued, "I want you to come back, not as a soldier, as a guide for others who lost their way. Train the next generation of handlers. Teach them how to listen, not just to commands, but to the whispers dogs give when danger is near." Liam exhaled slowly. "I don't know if I'm ready to step back into uniform." "You won't," Ellison assured him. "This role isn't military. It's mentorship, healing, and nobody can do it like you." Before Liam could respond, a deep, warm voice chimed in from the side. "I agree with the Colonel," Master Sergeant Cole Andrews said, stepping closer, folding his arms. "And trust me, kid, if you start teaching and it gets boring, Echo will bark your students awake." Liam snorted softly. "That she will." Cole grinned, a rare sight that softened the stern lines of his face. He clapped Liam on the shoulder with surprising gentleness. "You did good today. Real good. Haven't heard a voice like that since Phantom 3. He paused, eyes glistening faintly. "Proud of you, kid." Liam held his breath for a moment. Praise from Cole was no small thing. Echo wagged her tail once, as if accepting the compliment on Liam's behalf. Before Cole could say more, Riley Monroe approached them. This time, her stride lacked the rigid authority she usually wore like armor. Instead, she walked with a sincerity that softened her sharp features. "I just wanted to say goodbye before my shift ends," she said quietly. "And thank you again. For everything. For saving the kids. For your speech. For being honest." Liam nodded. "You were doing your job. You didn't owe me anything." Riley shook her head. "I owed you the truth. And I owed Echo an apology, too." Echo trotted forward, sat between them, and lifted her paw, pressing it gently against Riley's boot again. Riley let out a breathy laugh, kneeling to stroke the dog's fur. You really are something, aren't you? She murmured to Echo. The German shepherd leaned her head against Riley's palm before returning to sit at Liam's side. Riley straightened, looking at Liam with something like genuine admiration. You're a good man, Carver, and she's a good dog. A brief pause. Harbor Point is lucky to have you both. She walked away before either of them could respond, leaving behind a silence filled with respect, not suspicion. Just as Riley disappeared into the shadows, Echo suddenly turned her head toward the distant coastline. Her body stiffened, not in fear, but in anticipation, as though she felt something vast and unseen stirring far beyond the surf. Her ears twitched, her breath deepened. Liam followed her gaze but saw only darkness, waves glistening under the moonlight. But Echo's eyes were fixed, focused on something just beyond the human world. A ripple of wind brushed over them, carrying a faint, cold whisper that didn't belong to the warm night. Echo lifted her head higher, and for a long moment, her expression held a quiet reverence. It was as if she were listening to Nova, as if she recognized a presence Liam could not see. Then, with sudden clarity, Echo released a single, powerful bark into the night sky, sharp, bright, almost ceremonial. The bark of closure, the bark of continuation. Liam felt a shiver, not of fear, but of destiny tapping on his shoulder. Echo looked back at him softly, her gaze saying, "She heard me." And Liam knew exactly who she was. The base lights faded completely. Ellison and Cole eventually departed with friendly nods. Liam and Echo began the walk back toward the main gate, where the scent of the sea was stronger and the breeze cooler. When they reached the small parking lot outside the fence, Liam paused. He looked down at Echo, who was now calmly sitting on the asphalt, tail sweeping slow arcs. He knelt beside her and gently touched the metal tag on her collar, the fragment engraved with Nova. For the first time in 19 years, touching it didn't feel like touching a wound. It felt like touching a bridge, one linking the past and the future. Today was something, he whispered. Echo pressed her forehead against his chest. Liam looked toward the ocean, where moonlight shimmered in long pathways across the waves. You know, he said softly, I think Ellison's right. Maybe it's time. Echo's ears perked. Tomorrow, Liam continued, smiling faintly, we go back to the base. This time not as ghosts. This time to teach, to help the next generation learn how to listen to dogs like you. Echo's tail thumped twice. Liam chuckled. Yeah, you'll do half the teaching anyway. He sat on the wooden step outside his cabin when they reached home, Echo leaning against him, warm and steady. The salt wind whispered around them, carrying echoes of things lost and things found. Ready for tomorrow, girl? Liam murmured. Echo lifted her head and nudged his chin before settling again. It wasn't just acceptance. It was a promise. Together, they would begin again. Sometimes, the smallest sound can change a life. A single bark in the dark. A moment of courage when no one is watching. A reminder that the world still carries quiet miracles. Some sent through loyal dogs, some whispered into our hearts by God Himself. In our daily lives, we are often too busy or too burdened to notice the signs around us. But every day, God places people, moments, and even animals in our path to guide us, protect us, and remind us that we are never walking alone. And sometimes, as Liam and Echo discovered, the miracle you're waiting for is the one standing right beside you. If this story touched you, if you believe that faith, loyalty, and compassion can still transform the world, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. tell us where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder of hope today. And if you'd like more stories of courage and healing, make sure to subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide your steps, today and every day that follows.